This meeting is being recorded.
Yay, there we go. And looks like there's a chat. All right, cool. So I'm gonna set this aside over here. So we again, we did the first 10 slides of the PowerPoint. So real quick, I noticed, so before we launch into the actual meat of the class today, real quick, so I noticed that some of you have not completed the exam yet. So please, please, please don't forget, you need to get that done. I know that there isn't a hard deadline, but I want to make sure that everyone stays stays caught up. And so hopefully you can get it done this week. And then you know, you do get two attempts, so 2 tries. So if you're not happy with your first score, go over, take a look at the ones that you missed, and then go back and retake the test, and hopefully you'll get a higher score. Remember that the highest score of the 2 attempts are the ones that are going to go into the grade book. All right, so you do have those 2 attempts. There is a homework assignment that's due next Thursday, a week from today. Hopefully you were able to see where those assignments are. I had someone ask earlier where that's located. And if you haven't found it yet, it's in the chapter 4 modules. It's chapter 4 module, and it's at the very end or close to the end. You'll see it's called the sleep. It's a sleep journal, dream journal, and then the sleep and dream analysis. So those are the three things that you need to be working on. So the first 2, the journals, the sleep journal and the dream journals, that's what you're going to be kind of taking. Hold on, somebody's trying to get in. Is that I'm in? I think so. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, sleep journal and the dream journal. You need to keep track of your sleep and your dreams for the next 7 days. Hopefully you've already started, and then you'll be doing your sleep analysis next week once you've collected your data for the 7 days. Okay. So any questions about that?
I just have a quick question on this sleep deprivation slide. What do you mean by accidents?
Oh, those were I don't know if you were familiar with the Chernobyl or the Exxon Valdez. Those were from way back. Chernobyl was when the nuclear reactor in Russia basically spilled over. And so they call it an accident, but it was due to sleep deprivation. And then the Exxon Valdez was a ship, I believe is off the coast of Alaska or somewhere up in the north. And there was some sleep deprivation, and there was a huge oil spill that occurred through the Exxon. This is an oil ship. It was Exxon. I don't know if you're familiar with the actual oil company Exxon. Well, they were transporting oil, and that oil spilled into the ocean. And it was because part of the reason was because of sleep deprivation. Some of the decisions that were made on that ship caused that oil to spill. So
Wow.
that's what we mean by accidents. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad you asked. Yeah.
Quick question about the homework.
Yeah, please.
So we're basically keeping a sleep journal or a just like a record of what we dream about.
Well, there is a form. So in the modules, there's an actual form that you're going to use to keep track.
Okay.
Yeah, so the sleep journal, I actually have a form for you to actually fill out every day. So make sure that you're filling that out every night or every morning. Okay.
Sleep journal, dream journal, and sleep analysis, right?
Right. Yeah, those are the 3 assignments. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad you're asking. Any other questions? We're good? All right. Very cool. Cool. All right, there we go. Hopefully, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Okay, so All right, so we were talking about sleep deprivation, and during the last, what was it? I believe it was, on Tuesday, I had you all do a sleep deprivation. I had posted the sleep deprivation, sleep debt, I think it was, assignment and or activity, and you all you all participated, which is awesome. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when we're sleep deprived, and especially the longer we're sleep deprived. Okay, so I want to give you kind of a quick overview of the effects of sleep deprivation over time. Okay, so let's say that you are sleep deprived for 24 hours, right? So one night you don't sleep at all, you stay up all night, right? And most of us are pretty capable of going without a night on sleep, without sleep for one night. It's tolerable in most cases. It's tolerable. Sometimes uncomfortable, right? But let's say you don't sleep, and now you're going into night 2, and you're still not sleeping, right? Now, at this point, with 2 nights without sleep, the urge to sleep is a lot stronger, especially around 3 to 5 a.m. in the morning. And usually that's because that's when our body temperature is at its lowest. Okay. Night 3, we're still not sleeping. Sorry, letting people in still. By night 3, if we're still not sleeping, anything that requires sustained attention or attention to detail or mental calculations, that becomes seriously impaired. So now if we've gone 3 nights without any sleep, this is where we start to see some serious cognitive impairments. This is particularly true if the task is repetitious or if it's boring. And again, in the early hours is when we'll feel that really strong temptation or urge to sleep, right, between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning. Now at night 4, so again, this is no sleep, right? No sleep for 4 nights. From this night onward, this is where we're going to start to experience what are called micro sleeps. So this is basically where people will literally stop what they're doing and stare into space for up to 3 seconds. And the end of that micro sleep is usually accompanied by a return to full awareness or full consciousness or consciousness itself. Right? Now, if you've had 4 nights without any sleep at all, you're going to be irritable, sometimes confused. You're going to be misperceiving things, right? A lot of misperception that happens. And also the other thing that happens, and I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but there's also what's called the hat phenomenon. Basically what it feels like is it feels like you're wearing a hat that's too small for your head. So it feels like there's a tightening around your head. And that usually happens at about night 4 of no sleep. Night 5, if we're not sleeping still, the effects, everything that we've talked about previously still happens. But at night 5, this is basically where we start to experience delusions. And delusions are what we call false beliefs. We start to experience these delusions. Again, huge problem solving or cognitive impairments, on and continuing, right? Night 6, if you haven't slept in 6 nights, this is basically where we start to feel symptoms of depersonalization. So our sense of identity gets lost by night 6. We lose that. We lose that ability to know who we are, right? And this is by night 6. This is what we call sleep deprivation psychosis. So we actually are in a psychotic. We're actually having psychotic symptoms. Kevin is asking, can you have hallucinations if you don't have enough sleep? That's a good question. I know that there's delusions, And if the psychosis symptoms sometimes do include hallucinations. So yeah, yep. So yeah, you can. So sleep deprivation is real. And the more nights that you go without sleep, the worse it is, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting enough sleep, right? And I think we left off, and I just remembered, we were talking about the tips, right, for better sleep. So how do we get more sleep, right, every night? I think that's where we were at. So the first tip that I left you with on Tuesday was having a set sleep schedule, right? So making sure that we're going to bed at the same time every night and that we're waking up at the same time in the mornings, right? And that's Monday through Sunday. So that includes the weekends. Every single day, set a schedule. And I think I left you with, if you're going to bed like at 2:00 in the morning, don't try to go to bed at 10 to kind of ease your way to that 10 p.m. sleep time. So that you're able to get to that 10. So an example of that would be, if you weren't here on Tuesday, was if you go to bed at 2:00 in the morning tonight, go to bed at 1:45 in the morning. Do that for a couple of nights, and then move it to 1:30. Do that for a couple of nights, and then move that to 1:15, and on and so forth until you get to that 10 p.m. slot. Because you can't just all of a sudden expect your body to be sleepy when you've kept that body up every night till 2:00 in the morning. It's just not going to happen. Okay. So you have to do a gradual shift. And I would suggest, if you do go to bed at 2 a.m. in the morning, is wake up at 6, right? Or wake up at 7 a.m. And that way your body is exhausted. So that's tip number 1. Now, as I'm going through these tips, some of you might feel like, well, you know what, I'm getting enough sleep. I'm not falling asleep during the day. I'm not having to, I'm not feeling tired. I'm able to sit through stuff without falling asleep or whatever, right? If that's the case, then these tips are not for you, right? These tips are for those individuals who are having some serious issues with sleeping or not getting enough sleep, all right? So the second tip is to make sure that your bedroom or your bed is only used for sleep, right? So some of you might be using your bedrooms or your beds to study or to eat. So don't do that. And the reason for that is because you've learned to associate your bed with everything but sleep, okay? So make sure that you stop doing those things. And also the devices, right? Don't have your devices next to you when you're sleeping, because those are very distracting. Kevin's asking, do daily naps affect your sleeping schedule? Yes, they do, depending on how long those naps are. We're going to talk about naps in a second, okay? So going back to the bedroom, right? So making sure that the bed is only used for sleep, and sex as well. Sex is perfectly okay to have on your bed as well. So that's not going to affect your sleep patterns. The other thing too is you want to make sure that your room is at a comfortable temperature. So you don't want it to be too hot. You don't want it to be too cold. Typically, and that's going to depend on you. So typically a comfortable temperature might be like 65, 68, something like that. So you want to keep your room at a comfortable temperature. The other thing too is you want to make sure that it's dark. Don't have light as much as possible. You don't want to be watching TV while you're in bed. Because again, that disrupts because of the light, that disrupts your your circadian rhythms. And so you want to make sure that you're actually preparing your body to go to sleep. So some of the things that you could be doing, and many of you probably do this, is you could be, and we do this with kids, right? So we'll give them a bath, right? About an hour and a half before they go to bed. And make sure that it is at least an hour and a half before you go to bed, right? Don't do it any sooner or close. You want to give yourself a little bit of time between the bath time or the shower. Usually baths are better at night and showers are better in the mornings. But you want to make sure that you give yourself that time to kind of help to relax your body. Also, the rituals that we do, brushing our teeth, washing our faces, all of those things, quiet time, for kids, especially if you have children, this is how you teach them to prepare for sleep, right? So turn off all of the electronics, computers, TVs, phones, put all that stuff away and use that hour before you go to sleep as a way to start unwinding, whether it's as quiet activities. So maybe you might want to read, or you might want to color, or find a quiet activity, meditate even, before you go to sleep. And that helps to prepare your body for sleep, right? Because you can't expect, and especially with kids, I don't know, some of you might have children, and so if they're running around, and I remember even from when my kids were little, they're running around like crazy, and then we tell them, okay, go to bed, and they have all of this energy, and we're expecting them to fall asleep, and they pop right back out of bed, right? And they're like, they want water, I'm hungry, I want another hug, can you tell me another story, or read another book, or whatever the case may be. They're just not they're not going to sleep. And so we really do have to prepare them and ourselves to actually lay down and sleep, right? Oh, no, it's okay, Kevin. You can ask questions. That's good. How do you get cold sweats when you wake up while sleeping? I have no idea. Cold sweats. Well, it probably has a lot to do with the body temperature, right? So at night, remember that our body temps go way down. And so I'm not sure how that mechanism works. So yeah, that's a great question. I don't have the answer to, but I'm thinking it has to do with our body temperatures fluctuating at night, right? As we cycle through stage 4 and out into REM, probably. Okay. All right. Other tips. Oh yeah. So the electronics, you want to make sure that you turn all that off. Exercise. One of the things that is recommended is that you make sure that if you are going to exercise, that you do it at least 3 to 4 hours before you fall asleep. And the reason for that is because if you're exercising, you're actually bringing up your heart rate, right? You're activating you're increasing heart rate, you're increasing breathing and blood pressure and all of that. And so it takes time for your body to come back down to normal. And so you want to make sure that you're doing the exercises before, 3 to 4 hours before you go to sleep. Meals, you should, if you're gonna eat, you want to make sure that you eat before 7. It's good for you because you want to make sure that you've digested your food before you lay down. Part of that is just, you don't want that stuff, coming into your esophagus and all of that stuff. So you want to make sure that you've digested a lot of that food beforehand. Let's see what else. So make sure you eat before, usually, and try not to make it like a huge meal. If you're going to have a huge meal, make it earlier so that you have time to actually digest it. The other question that always comes up is, what about alcohol? A lot of people will use alcohol as a way to fall asleep because it helps to slow down our central nervous system. Again, in moderation. Alcohol doesn't work. I mean, if you're drinking a lot and then going to sleep, you're not going to get into the deep sleep and REM. People who drink large amounts of alcohol actually stay in stages 1 and 2, and they never go into 3, 4, and REM. So your deep sleep and your REM, which are incredibly important. Remember, those are the essentials. The essential stages, we have to be in deep sleep, which is stages 3 and 4. and we have to be in REM. And so drinking large amounts of alcohol don't allow us to actually go into those stages. And so we're superficial. And that's why a lot of times we'll wake up, we feel more tired, and we don't feel like we've had a good night's sleep. So again, in moderation when it comes to alcohol. Trying to think of what else when it comes to tips. So we talked about the room, we talked about the bed, exercise. I think that's all of it. Oh, naps. Yeah. So if you are sleep deprived, and especially if you're if you work the night shift, or if you're working the graveyard shifts, you're going to have to take naps. Or if you're just not able to sleep, you need to take naps, right? So you feel tired during the day. So with naps, there's a couple of rules when you take naps to make sure that it does not interfere with your sleep cycle at night. Okay, so number one is you need to make sure that you're taking your nap before 3 in the afternoon. And these are for normal, so not for the night shifts, because typically night shifts you probably start your day around 3:30 or whatever, so that wouldn't work for you. So you would take your nap, you would have to make sure that you're taking it about 6 to 7 hours before you fall asleep. So if you can squeeze in a nap in there, you want to make sure that you're doing it about 6 or 7 hours before you fall asleep. So if you're going to bed at 10, right, you want to make sure that you're doing it before 3 o'clock, that 3 o'clock deadline. Your naps should never be more than 30 minutes. 20 minutes is ideal. As a matter of fact, if any of you have taken naps and you've taken like a 20 minute nap, and you wake up and you feel like you're refreshed, like you can keep going. Some of us actually take naps that are longer than 30 minutes, and then we wake up from stage 4. And that's that. Remember, the stage 4 is that stage where we wake up feeling groggy, disoriented. We feel worse than we did when we fell asleep. So you want to make sure that the naps are no more than 30 minutes. Okay. So again, before 3 and no more than 30 minutes. Okay. All right. So those are the tips for those of you who are sleep deprived, having problems sleeping. The other thing too is if you're having difficulties falling asleep, some of you might have some insomnia. One of the tips is, another tip, especially for insomnia, is to not lay there in bed trying to fall asleep. Okay, so if you're sitting there and you're not asleep within 10 minutes and it's dragging on to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and now it's like 45 minutes, get up, get out of bed, and go do something relaxing until you start to fall asleep, until you start to feel sleepy. And then when you feel sleepy, go to bed, right? Get back into your bed and go to sleep. Because a lot of times when we're laying there, we're pretty much beating ourselves up, getting more and more frustrated because we are not falling asleep. And the more we're beating ourselves up and the more frustrated we become, the less likely we are to actually fall asleep, because now it's becoming harder and harder for you to fall asleep, because now you've got all this anxiety about not being able to fall asleep. So it's better to just get up, go do something that's relaxing, and go to sleep when you're ready. Okay. The other thing too is a lot of folks, and I've had students who've talked about this, where their mind races, where, I mean, they're having problems falling asleep because there's just too much stuff going on. And my recommendation for that would be to have a notepad, a pen and paper, or like a composition book or something that you can write in, and just basically jot everything down. A lot of times we can't fall asleep because we're afraid we're going to forget what we're thinking about, right? And so, or the thinking is so random and so like all over the place, and it's difficult to fall asleep. And so my recommendation is just to write it down, write it out. And that way you're doing what I like to call a brain dump. And then hopefully once you've done that, you just write. And once you've done that, you feel sleepy, and then you're able to fall asleep Okay. Any questions? So those are kind of some of the stuff. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. For those of you who do have issues with sleep deprivation, I'm hoping that those tips help. Okay. Cool. Oh, and the other thing too, milk, drinking milk, and it doesn't have to be warm milk. It could be cold milk, and if you like milk, it's good to drink some milk before you go to sleep as well, because that seems to help. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next. Sleep issues. So some of the stuff. So here's some of the. I think there's one more. There we go. I think those are all of them. So we'll start with insomnia, which we touched on a little bit. So insomnia can be one of two things or both of them. So insomnia is either difficulty falling asleep, right? Or difficulty staying asleep, or both. Okay. So this is difficulty falling asleep, and or staying asleep. Okay. So that's insomnia. And there's a lot of people who have what's called transient insomnia. So it comes and goes. It's not that big a deal. But there are others who have chronic insomnia. And so that could be an indication of some issues, maybe some anxiety or some other medical issues. So it'd be something that you should talk to a doctor about if you have chronic insomnia, where it's like you have difficulty falling asleep and or staying asleep for a long time. It's been weeks, months that you're having this issue. So it'd be something to kind of bring up to a doctor and have them help, right? Narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is basically sleep attacks, what we call sleep attacks. So this is basically where randomly someone will just fall asleep. So they'll be awake, they'll be doing something, and all of a sudden they'll just crumble to the ground, right? Where they lose muscle control and they just basically just fall to the ground. Or they might just, in some cases, they might just fall asleep. And this is not related in any way to sleep deprivation. This is just, this could be someone who's getting, the required or the amount of sleep that they need to be, but they have a disorder where they just randomly fall asleep. Okay. Sleep apnea. This is where this is a disorder where people stop breathing hundreds of times while they're sleeping. They just stop breathing multiple times during the night. So basically what happens is, and this is usually true for people who are obese or overweight, and basically what ends up happening is that during multiple times, and this is during REM. Whoops. Remember we talked about during REM where we have muscle paralysis, right? So it's basically where the muscles stop moving, right? The signals stop being sent. Well, with sleep apnea, what ends up happening is when the person slips into REM, the trachea, right, the tube that allows the air to go to and from, right? It actually collapses onto itself. And so the person actually stops breathing. And it's hundreds of times during the, oh no, I'm trying to get up. Oh, whoop, whoop. Hold on. Let me go back. Let me see if I can, that looks like there's some chatter. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true, Jason. It can be very dangerous, and I'm so sorry that your friend passed away because of sleep apnea. That's sad. Um, Question, Kevin, can night terrors also be from sleep paralysis, or is it different from that? It is different. Night terrors are not, it's not sleep paralysis. Remember, sleep paralysis is that the person isn't moving, and we're going to get to night terrors in a second. I'll explain what night terrors are. Okay. So, so sleep apnea can actually cause heart attacks. It's been linked, especially if you're like, you stop breathing, there's no oxygen happening. So it could literally help, stop your heart. So that's why, if someone is having, and it usually, one of the markers is really super loud snoring. So if someone is snoring so loud that the whole entire household wakes up, that could be an indication that they have sleep apnea. If it's a partner that you're sleeping with and you notice that they're not breathing, that it may be something that you might want to have them talk to a doctor about, because there's actually machines that can be used that help, the CPAP machines that people can use during the night to help them actually continue breathing. And basically what the CPAP does is it's this continuous positive airway. And basically what it is that it's providing continuous oxygen to the individual so that they don't stop breathing. So it's forcing the trachea to stay open during REM. Okay. Nightmares. Is sleep apnea more risky if you have pneumonia? I have no idea. That's a great question. I don't know. That's a good question. I know that it's more likely for individuals who are overweight. Now, whether a particular illness might cause it as well, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Okay. Good question, though. Nightmares, these occur during REM. So remember, REM, we're paralyzed. We don't know what's going on, right? Well, we don't know. Well, during sleep, we don't know. We're not aware. So nightmares are, those scary dreams that we have, and they occur during REM, right? Remember the vivid dreaming that we have? That's your nightmares. Night terrors, on the other hand, occur. Whoops. I can't spell. Sorry about that. During stage 4. So stage 4, remember, now we're not paralyzed, right? So our muscles are moving. So night terrors, typically this happens in children. So we tend to see this particular disorder in children, and they tend to outgrow it. Night terrors is basically where the person, it seems as if the person is fighting off or is terrified about something, right? And they're either fighting something off, they're screaming at the top of their lungs. It's a really scary thing. And when the person wakes up and the next morning, they have no recollection whatsoever that they had this episode. But everyone else in the house probably is aware of it because it woke them up. But the individual who had the night terror has no recollection whatsoever that they had this episode. Okay. And typically with kids, and by the way, adults can if they had this problem as a child, if an adult is under a tremendous amount of stress, that could come back as an adult. Okay, so this could manifest itself later on, especially if they're not managing their stress well. Okay. Sleepwalking and sleep talking. I will say sleep talking. All right. Sleep talking, again, this occurs during stage 4. Okay. So night terrors, sleepwalking, and sleep talking all occur during stage 4. Sleepwalking, again, children, sleep talking as well. We tend to see it more in children, and they tend to outgrow it. However, again, as adults, we can revert back to it because of stress. So if we're, again, feeling overwhelmed, we could actually start sleepwalking and sleep talking again as adults, okay? So sleepwalking is basically during stage 4 where they get up out of bed and they start walking around and doing stuff. You know, they go to the refrigerator or they walk out the door. That's really scary, especially for a child. There's actually been instances where the children actually walked out the door and out on the street, and they were sleepwalking, right? And I've actually had students who've talked about, how they've actually asked questions while someone was sleeping, and to get them to talk about stuff, which is kind of creepy. But yeah, so some people will actually talk during this, well, in stage 4. A lot of it is just gibberish. You don't understand it. Usually you can't understand what it is that the person is actually saying. So yeah, so those are some of the disorders, right? When we talk about sleep problems, okay? Any questions about these? Or further, any other questions? Oh, all right, we'll move on. Okay, so here is, and I'm gonna move this out of there. So here's a little graphic that shows you, again, the graph. Remember we were talking about how, when we're awake here, right? Whoop, let me go back. So we're awake, and then we slip into stage 1, and then we slip into stage 2, slip into stage 3, and stage 4. Here's where sleepwalking and sleep talking actually occur. And then we talked about how we go back into stage 2, and then we go into REM. And you'll notice that as the night progresses, right? And remember that this is from here to here, this is equal to 1 cycle of sleep, right? 1 cycle of sleep, which is equal to approximately 90 minutes. And this we talked about on Tuesday, right? So again, stage 4, you notice here's the night terrors, right, in stage 4. And then as the night progresses, you'll notice that the REM becomes longer, right? You'll notice that it just becomes longer and longer. And again, nightmares occur during REM. Okay, so this is kind of a graphic that helps to show where and when night terrors, sleepwalking, sleep talking, and nightmares actually occur. Okay, cool. All right, so let's get into dreams. Woohoo! Dreaming. And this is always fun to talk about. So think about dreams as mental experiences that we have when we're asleep. Okay, the content tends to be familiar, and as a matter of fact, when we dream, we actually have common themes. Right, so there's actually some research or some folks that believe that that when we're dreaming, there's actually some common themes that pop up. And so if we're really paying attention, and that's what I'm hoping that the next 7 days, that as you're thinking about your dreams or as you're writing down what you're dreaming about, that maybe some of these common themes are gonna get exposed. They're gonna come to the surface for you, and you can kind of see what it is maybe your subconscious is trying to tell you, or your unconscious is trying to tell you, right? So when we talk about themes, it's really like a window into your unconscious, right? And it's also just day residue. Sometimes it's stuff that we've experienced during the day that tends to spill over into our dreams. So sometimes you might have actually had where something happened during the day, and then it kind of comes out while you're dreaming, right? Some of that stuff, right? So here's the theories for why we dream, right? There's actually 4, and I'll put the 4th one here. 4 main theories as to why we dream, okay? So we'll start with the first one, which is Freud's theory of dreams, and it's psychoanalytic theory. And basically Freud, remember when we talk about Freud, Anytime you see Freud, it's about the unconscious, right? Right? So we talk about the unconsciousness. So Freud believed that dreams are a window into our unconscious experience. Okay. So it's unconscious. So basically, what he stated was that dreams provide insight into our unconscious. They're an expression of our unconscious wishes, right? So dreams are the way that we express our unconscious wishes. Okay. Most psychologists actually accepts Freud's notion that dreams are more than ramblings, um, and that they're symbolic, right? But they also understand that not all dreams are symbolic, right? So they understand that not all of the stuff that we dream about has to be symbolic, right? So it may not have a theme. It could be just random, right? And so a lot of psychologists have different theories, and that's where we come into like the problem solving. So problem solving, basically dreams can be an effort to deal with some of our issues, some of the problems that we're having, right? They may reflect ongoing conscious issues like concerns over relationships or work or sex or health, right? Um, Dreams are more likely to actually contain material that's related to a person's current concerns than than chance would predict, right? So a lot of times our dreams will contain things that are related to our current situation. Okay, so sometimes it could be, especially as a college student, right? It might be testing. You might be having dreams about tests or exams or presentations that you're gonna have to do, right? The cognitive theory is dreams as thinking, right? So dreaming is the same kind of activity that we engage in when we're actually awake, right? Remember, the brainwave activity in REM is the same as if we were awake, right? That those beta waves, right? And the difference is that the cerebral cortex is cut off from all external stimulation, right? And so the prediction that if we're awake but cut off from external stimulation, our thoughts would have the same hallucinatory quality that we experience in our dreams, right? So because we're cut off from that external stimulation, then it's those thoughts, right? Is that hallucinatory effect because of not having any kind of external stimulation. Okay. So far, so good? All right, cool. Questions about this so far? Are you guys doing okay? All right. The fourth theory, the last theory of why we dream, is what we call activation synthesis theory. And in this theory, basically what this states is that, oh, wait, maybe someone has. Oh, cool. I'm glad you're finding it interesting. Thanks, Akai. So activation synthesis theory. This is basically the notion that there is no purpose or no meaning to dreams, and that it's just our brain's way of making sense of all that activity. So there's no meaning whatsoever to dreams, and it's just our brain's way of trying to make sense of all that activity that's happening, right? All that electrical activity, and trying to make sense of that electrical activity in dreams. And that kind of explains some of the bizarre and unusual and kind of way out there dreams that maybe we might have, right? Some of the stuff that we dream about is pretty far-fetched, and we're like, what the heck? When we wake up, we're like, oh my God, what the hell was that about? Or how, whatever, right? So it could be some really weird stuff that happens, but it's just your brain's way of trying to make sense of it, right? Putting it all together. So it's just all of the, when we think about activation synthesis, it's dreaming results or comes from the cortical synthesis right? So it's that analysis and interpretation of all those neural signals, right? Those electrical signals that are triggered by activity in the lower part of the brain. Okay. And at the same time, brain regions that handle logical thought and sensation from the external world are shut down, right? So again, no external stimulation, but we've got all of this electrical activity that's happening, and the brain is trying to figure out what it all means, right? So it's analyzing that electrical activity and it's interpreting that electrical activity, which gives us dreams, right? So yeah, so there's your 4 theories of why we dream. There isn't an overarching theory for why we dream. All 4 of these are valid depending on the type of dream that you have. And so when you're doing your when you're doing your analysis, and when I ask you to analyze the dream, this is what I want you to talk about in these, whatever dream that you're going to talk about. You're only going to pick one of those dreams, and you're going to analyze it, and you're going to analyze it based on one of these 4 theories, or maybe multiple. You might, maybe it's a problem solving plus cognitive. I don't know. But whatever it is, or maybe it's psychoanalytic, maybe it's, it's your unconscious, right? It's trying to tell you something. Maybe there's a theme or a common theme that's coming up for you, right? And so I want you to talk about that in your assignment in terms of these four theories. Okay. So hopefully that helps for that, assignment. Okay. Cool. All right. So with that, why we dream. Some folks, usually this comes up, and I'm surprised you guys haven't asked about this yet, but lucid dreaming. How many of you have heard about lucid dreaming? You guys heard about it? Yes, no, maybe, kind of, sort of. Yeah, so some of you have. 1, 2. Yeah, okay, cool. So lucid dreaming is it's super cool. Oh, cool. You've done it before, Kevin. That's awesome. So lucid dreaming is basically where you're in control. You're in control of your dreams. So as you're falling asleep, you're deciding, okay, you know what? Tonight I'm going to dream about, whatever. So you basically are the narrator of your dream, right? And so you can actually control what happens in your dream while you're dreaming. And so it's really cool. For those of you who've never done it before, it takes practice. And so it's just something that with time and with effort, you can actually start doing for yourself as well. So it's really cool. It's you get to kind of figure out what it is that you want to dream about, and then how the storyline is actually going to happen. So it's really cool. The other thing that always comes up too is the different themes. So sometimes there are common dream themes, and people want to know, oh, what's the interpretation, right? And so these are some, and if you if you're trying to figure out, or you go to someone and you say, and my mom does this all the time. She'll tell me about some dream that she had, and she'll tell me what it means. And in certain cultures, this is super, super important. I know Native American culture, a lot of Latin culture. I know Italians do this all the time, and I think even in Mexican or South American culture, this is also very, very prominent, where dreams are telling you something, right? They mean something. And so my suggestion is if you have a dream, the best person to interpret that dream is you. Right? If you're experiencing that dream, then you are the one that's going to be the best person to interpret it, because you're the one that knows what the symbols mean, right? So if there's some kind of symbolic meaning to your dream, you're the one that's going to understand what that symbolic meaning actually is. Okay. However, there are some dreams that we might have that are common, and many people have these. And so these are just kind of some of the interpretations that people have about these dreams. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through some of these, and some of you might be like, oh yeah, I've had that dream. And so this is the interpretation, the common interpretation that experts say. Okay, so I don't know if any of you've ever dreamt about being naked in public. This is a common dream. And most of us have had the dream at some point, especially like that we're at school, work, or some social event, and we suddenly realize that we forgot to put on clothes. Experts say that this means that we're trying to hide something, and that without clothes, we're having a hard time doing that. It could also mean that we're not prepared for something like a presentation or a test, and now everyone's going to know we're exposed, basically. Okay. What is it? I'm gonna say I didn't happen, but okay, I don't know what that means, Kevin. Another common dream is falling, right? So you're falling, and then you wake up, right? This is very, very common, and it's said to symbolize insecurities and anxiety. So something in your life is essentially out of control, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. Another interpretation is that you have a sense of failure about something. Maybe you're not doing well in school or at work, and you're afraid you're going to be fired or expelled. Again, you feel that you can't control the situation. Okay. A third common dream is being chased. Do others wake? Oh, Akai is asking a question. Do others wake up after they fall? Like people usually wake up before they fall, but I always wake up after I hit the ground. Yeah, I mean, that can happen. I don't know. I usually fall before. I don't know about others if they wake up before they fall, but for me personally, I wake up before I fall. So another one that is very common is being chased, right? So we're being chased. Another very popular dream, and it can be extremely frightening. I know I've woken myself up when I'm in these chase dreams. It's like something's chasing me, and I actually will tell myself, okay, wake up, this is just a dream, right? What this usually symbolizes is that you're running away from your problems. What that problem is depends on who is chasing you. It could be a problem at work, or it could be something about yourself that you know is destructive. For example, you may be drinking too much, and your dream may be telling you to stop, right? That your drinking has become a real problem, right? Another common dream is that you're taking an exam or forgetting that you have one. Another very common dream. Oh yeah, Kevin, yeah, right. We're always in slow motion. It's like we can't be moving fast enough. Yep. Yeah, that is so true. I always feel like, oh my God, move faster. Yep. All right. Another common one is taking an exam or forgetting that you have one. You suddenly realize you're supposed to be taking an exam at that very moment. You might be running through the halls and can't find the classroom. This type of dream can have several variations that have similar meanings. Maybe your pen is not writing, so you can't finish writing your answers. What experts say this may mean is that you're being scrutinized about something, or feel that you're being tested. So you're like under the microscope, right? Someone's watching you very closely. Or maybe you're facing a challenge that you don't think you're up to. You don't feel prepared. You don't feel that you're able to hold up to that scrutiny, right? It may also mean that there's something you've neglected that you know needs your attention, right? So that's some of the interpretations. Flying dreams are also really common, and these are a result of lucid dreaming. Not all flying dreams are, however. Typically, dreaming that you're flying means you're on top of things. You're in control of things that matter to you. Or maybe you've just gained a new perspective on things. It may also mean that you're strong-willed and feel like no one and nothing can defeat you. if you're having problems maintaining your flight, someone or something may be standing in the way of you having control. If you're afraid while flying, you may have challenges that you don't feel up to it, right? So these are, oh, this is another really common one, your teeth falling out. Many people have dreams that they lose all of their teeth. In this dream, they may feel something strange in their mouth and then spit teeth into their hand, eventually losing all of their teeth. According to some, our teeth are related to our sense of power and our ability to communicate. Losing our teeth not only makes us embarrassed by our appearance, which stops our communications, but it also lessens our power because we may not speak our minds. It's also associated with feelings about our appearance as well. So those are some of the common dreams that people have and some fun interpretations. Again, take it with a grain of salt. This is, again, the interpretation of the dream is going to depend on your own life circumstances or situations. Okay, cool. Questions? We're good? All right. Okay, so next slide. All right. Oh my gosh, we got a little bit of time. We can talk about drugs. Woohoo! Let's talk about drugs, baby. All right. So, in the consciousness chapter, remember we talked about altered consciousness? So this is where we talk about drugs, right? So this is altered consciousness is where we're really not there, right? We're physically there, but our mind is not, right? So there's some things that are going on that alters our consciousness in some way, right? So we're going to start with, there's 4 categories. When we talk about drugs, there's 4 categories of psychoactive drugs. So it's depressants, stimulants, opiates, and hallucinogens. Okay, opiates are also, what's the other term? Opiates and narcotics, right? And then hallucinogens, or what we call psychedelics. Okay, so those are the 4 categories. So we're going to start with talking about depressants. So as a whole, depressants reduce our central nervous system activity. So CNS means central nervous system. Okay, so that way you know what CNS, in case you forgot. Okay, and under depressants, we're going to talk about alcohol and tranquilizers. Okay, so alcohol, most everybody understands. They decrease arousal and they reduce central nervous system activity. Right. What it does, it actually facilitates. And I'll write this out. Remember the GABA neurotransmitter, the major inhibitory neurotransmitter? Well, it facilitates the effect of GABA neurotransmission. Okay, so basically what it does is it increases GABA neurotransmission. All right, so by releasing more GABA neurotransmitters into the system, we're in a sense reducing electrical activity in the system, in the nervous system. Okay, so that's what alcohol does, right? Oh, and by the way, all drugs